The Shanghai stock market, which a lot of people suddenly became acquainted with this year because of its meteoric rise and then crash, really is not a reflection of the Chinese economy. It hasn't correlated to what's going on the ground in China for years.
You famously remarked that China's economy is on a treadmill to hell. And the moment that your interest really peaked in shorting assets related to China, companies, et cetera, was when your real estate guy came to you. What did he say?
It's actually was in this room, this conference room. He put up some numbers on the whiteboard to my right, and he pointed out that underdevelopment in the fall of '09, China had 5.6 billion square meters of high-rises, and half residential, basically apartments, and half office. And I sort of thought for a second, I said, no, you're missing a decimal point. It's got to be 5.6 billion square feet. Square meters, roughly 10 square feet. And it can't be 5.6 billion square meters, that's 60 billion square feet. And he sort of, paused and said, I know, I double checked it. It's 5.6 billion square meters. And that was sort of the aha moment for me and my partners when we realized just how extensive the real estate build out was. If half of that was office space, that was 30 billion square feet. And we sort of figured out on the fly that was a 5 foot by 5 foot office cubicle for every man, woman, and child in China. The Chinese economy in 2010, on a nominal basis, before adjusting for inflation, was growing at 15%. It was 10% real growth, 5% inflation. Today, the Chinese economy on a nominal basis is growing at 5%, 7% real and 2% deflation. The US economy is growing at 4% nominal. I mean, China is actually not growing now very much more than we are. And that's important because it's the nominal GDP yuan or currency that pays off their debts. And basically the Chinese economy has been slowing 2 points a year for 5 years. If the US economy borrowed as much money as China does every year to fund construction, we'd be growing at 7 or 8 or 9% too.
President Xi Jinping makes you very nervous. Why?
I think he's a different kind of a leader, and that's been one of the surprises to us during the last 5 years. I think most people thought he would be first among equals, like the last two regimes of Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin. Xi Jinping is a different guy. He's more of a nationalist, he's more of a throwback, and although it's still state-directed capitalism, he's much more of a view that the West doesn't need to share in the spoils than the previous administrations. So his nationalism has taken on a very anti-Western tone to it. It struck me that this person was pretty confident in who he was, and this was not going to be a shared leadership, and probably not a reformed leadership. This was going to be more like Vladimir Putin than first among equals.
You've said that the Chinese government is running out of room to borrow, and capital is leaving. Goldman says 36 billion left in the first half of the year. But Goldman's Asia Pacific chairman, Mark Schwartz, also came out and said the market reaction is globally overdone. Which is it? Is the market responding correctly?
In 2015, the market's woken up to China for a few reasons. And I don't know if it's overdone or underdone, but I think that a few things have happened. The stock market boom and bust, where the government encouraged people to go in and then sort of, botched a ham-handed rescue attempt, I think sort of laid bare the argument that the Chinese leadership is very capable and they always are going to do the right thing and they have buttons to push and levers to pull. I think, as I've said, they've made the same policy mistakes that we all do.
But Donald Trump says they're smarter than us.
I would disagree with Donald Trump on that argument. And number two, that in fact, now that the currency might go both ways, the whole concept of hot money going into China to basically invest money, borrow it in the West, invest it in the East, and have the currency appreciate is now under question. And increasingly, China now is not only borrowing money domestically, but it's exhausting that deposit base. It's borrowing money abroad. And that's one of the sort of underreported stories. Not only is capital leaving the country, but Chinese companies increasingly are borrowing in dollars in the West.